On the cold edge of the galaxy, there was a mining station built between two broken moons. Inside, many alien species worked, traded, and survived. But deep inside the station, away from the light, lived a girl named Valari. She was tall, strong, with pale violet skin and bright yellow eyes. Her kind, called the Tervari, were known for beauty, grace, and perfect bodies. But Valari didn't look like the others. She was born heavier, stronger, with wide shoulders and a square jaw when the time came. Every girl her age was sent to the breeding halls. It was tradition, a place where high-ranked males picked mates for lineage. But no one picked Valari. The first time, she was told, not soft enough. The second time, a noble male laughed. Is that a Tervari or a guard beast? The third time, she was simply ignored. After that, they stopped calling her. She stayed in the shadows, working as a cargo lifter on the lower levels. She kept her head low, wore thick cloaks to hide her body. She never spoke unless ordered. She believed she was broken until the day the human came. His name was David Carver. He wasn't a soldier, not a diplomat, just a systems technician from Earth. He was assigned to the mining station to fix communication grids. Valari first saw him when she was hauling boxes. He looked confused, staring at the alien signs on the wall. She didn't care. She kept walking, but he noticed her. "Hey," he said. "You look like someone important." She stopped, shocked. No one had ever called her important. Her yellow eyes blinked, unsure what to say. He smiled and walked past her, not expecting an answer. But his words stayed in her mind like a spark in dry leaves. Later that day, she stood in front of a Miron, old cracked one she found in the storage room. She looked at herself, the strong arms, the sharp face, the thick legs. Was it possible? Could someone really see her as important? The next day, she saw David again. He was fixing a broken console near the hangar. As she walked past, two alien males drunk from BioWell laughed and said loud enough for her to hear, "Careful, human, that one's a factory unit. Probably crush you in sleep." They laughed cruelly. Valari felt shame, the old kind, deep in her chest. She turned to walk away, but David stood up. He faced the aliens and said calmly, "If strength, honor, courage don't count, then I guess I'm blind." Silence. The two aliens froze, blinking at the human. David didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just told the truth. Valari's hands clenched, and her heart beat faster. She walked away fast, not knowing what to feel in her small room. She sat on the floor and replayed the words in her head. Honor, courage, strength. She had those things, didn't she? Why did they never matter before? That night, she couldn't sleep. She remembered being a young girl, training alone while others danced, lifting heavy tools while others painted their faces. She had cried once when her mother said, "You must accept what you are, now." A stranger had said something different. A human, a species known for violence, emotion, and strange ideas, but also known for giving worth to things others ignored. The next day, she watched David from afar. He joked with engineers, helped an old alien fix a light. He didn't treat anyone like they were beneath him. He didn't act like he was better. Valari didn't know why, but she smiled just a little, and in that small smile, something new was born inside her. A tiny voice that whispered, "Maybe you're not broken." She didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of something big. Bigger than her fears, bigger than her shame, and it all started with one human who simply saw her. Valari couldn't forget the words. "You look like someone important." Just one sentence from a human, but it hit her harder than any insult ever had. Not because it hurt, but because it felt like a warm light in a cold, dark place she had spent years hiding, walking fast, head down, heart sealed shut. Now, those words kept playing in her mind like music she couldn't silence, even when she worked, even when she ate alone. The echoes stayed. Important? No one in her life had ever used that word for her. Not her family, not the elders, not the males who passed her by like empty air, but that human David had said it so casually, like he truly believed it. She didn't understand him. Why would he say that to someone like her? What did he see when he looked at her? A few days later, something happened that changed everything again. It was the late shift, and Valari was unloading crates near the docking bay. The air was cold and smelled like old metal and engine oil. Suddenly, loud laughter echoed from the side. 3 alien males sat around a barrel fire, drinking and throwing bones on the floor. One of them pointed at her and said, "Look, the war beast is loose again." The others laughed. "Don't scare the humans, Valari. You'll make them wet their suits." Valari felt her face burn with shame. She turned to walk away, as always, but this time she heard a calm voice cut through the noise. "Didn't your mothers teach you manners?" It was David, standing beside a nearby terminal. Arms crossed, the aliens paused, surprised. One of them smirked. "It's just a joke, human. Don't take it serious." David stepped closer, his voice steady but cold. "Then, maybe try a new joke," he said, "because that one's just weak." Valari stopped in her tracks, heart pounding. No one had ever stood up for her. Not like this. She looked back. And for a moment, their eyes met. He didn't look away. Later, she found herself standing near the hydroponic bay. It was where plants from different planets grew flowers, vines, even Earth's tomatoes. She had never entered before. It felt too peaceful for someone like her, but David was there, watering green sprouts in silence. He noticed her, gave a small nod. "Want to help?" he asked, handing her a small can of nutrient water. She didn't speak, but she stepped forward. Together, they watered the silent green life, side by side, no words needed. After a while, he looked at her and said, "You know, back on Earth, there are whole armies that would love someone with your strength." She blinked, unsure if he was joking. "I mean it," he continued. "You've got power, discipline, and heart." Valari looked down at her hands that had only known labor. She whispered, "But I'm not beautiful." David smiled, not mocking, just calm. "Who told you strength can't be beautiful?" Silence wrapped around them like soft air. Valari didn't answer, because she didn't know how. The idea was new, dangerous even, strength as beauty. Not in her world, but in his voice. She heard no lie. That night, something strange happened. As she walked back to her room, a young alien girl from her species stopped her in the hallway. "Is it true?" The girl asked shyly. "Did the human really say you were beautiful?" Valari froze. "Why?" she asked. The girl looked down. "Because I heard. And I want to believe maybe I'm not useless either." Valari didn't know what to say. She had never been anyone's hope before. The next day, another girl smiled at her, then another. Something had changed, not just inside Valari, but around her too, like a spark had caught dry wood. She went to her work, but she walked taller. She didn't wear the thick cloak anymore. She didn't lower her eyes, because one compliment, spoken in truth, had shaken the wall she had built for years, and deep inside her, something broken had started to heal, not because someone loved her, but because someone finally saw her. It was a part of the ship she never visited before. Cargo Bay 6 was cold, silent, and mostly unused now. The walls were rusting, lights flickered, and dust covered the old panels. But someone had left a trail, small footprints, fresh ones. Valari followed without thinking. She didn't know why, but her feet kept moving. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe something inside her hoped for peace. When she opened the side door, her eyes widened in shock. There, hidden in the back corner of the bay, was a garden, real soil, green leaves, blooming flowers in colors she had never seen: roses, sunflowers, moss, and something glowing faint blue from earth. It was quiet, but not empty alive. Warm, peaceful, and sitting cross-legged in the center was David. He didn't notice her at first. He was trimming leaves, with careful hands. His sleeves rolled up, dirt on his fingers, soft humming in his throat. It wasn't a song, just a rhythm, calm and slow. Valari stepped closer, and the floor creaked under her weight. David turned, surprised for a second, then smiled. "You found it?" he said, wiping his hands on a cloth. "I call this place ... The heart." She tilted her head, confused. He explained gently. "Every ship I work on. I try to make a place like this, something living, breathing, in the middle of all this metal." She looked around again, still unsure what to say. The smell of earth flowers filled her nose, sweet, rich, completely new. The soft soil under her boots felt like it came from another world, because it had. "Why?" she asked at last. David leaned back and looked up at the flickering lights. "Because machines don't need rest, but people do." He looked at her again. "And I thought maybe you could use a place like this." Valari's throat tightened. No one had ever made a place for her, not even space to stand. Now this stranger had grown a whole secret world. She moved to sit across from him. Slowly, the ground was soft, warmer than it looked. They sat in silence for a while, just breathing the air, listening to the buzz of light and life. Then she asked, "You don't think I'm strange?" David smiled again, not amused, but soft. "Of course, you're strange." He said, "So am I." She blinked, unsure if that was an insult or not. He continued, "Everyone here is strange. We're aliens to each other, but that doesn't make us wrong." She looked down at her hands, remembering all the times she was mocked for them. Thick fingers, rough palms, calluses from lifting. Then she looked at his, also rough, also marked with labor. Not soft, but useful, strong. "Your hands made this?" she asked. He nodded, every bit of it. Then he added with a small grin, "Though the moss keeps trying to escape." She let out a laugh, a real laugh, surprised even herself. David's eyes lit up as if he had found a rare treasure. "You should laugh more," he said. "It suits you." She went quiet again, but the smile remained. In that moment, she didn't feel like a mistake. She didn't feel ugly or unwanted. She just felt alive. David stood and reached into a small container beside him. He pulled out a flower-white petals, glowing edges. "This one is called Moonlight Blossom," he said. "Rare, even on Earth." He held it out to her. Valari hesitated, then took it with both hands. Gently, she held it like it might vanish. Like it wasn't meant for her, but it didn't fade. It didn't wilt. It stayed bright in her palm. "Why give this to me?" she asked. David looked her in the eyes and said simply, "Because you're worth it." No one had ever said those words to her before. Not even close. She placed the flower carefully in her belt pouch. "I will protect it," she whispered. David nodded. "I know." Before she left the hidden garden, she turned back. "Will you be here again?" David shrugged. "Every night I can." Then he paused and added, "You're always welcome." As she walked back through the dark halls, the cold air didn't feel so sharp. The shadows didn't feel so heavy, because now she had found a place where things grew. A place where someone saw her as more than her shape, more than her past, more than what others had judged. And in that hidden garden, something inside her had begun to bloom too. Astris Valari stood in front of the mirror, not the cracked storage mirror. From months ago, this was a clean one. She had cleaned it herself. She looked into her own eyes and asked softly, "Who are you becoming?" Her body was still the same, tall, strong, not soft like others. Her shoulders were wide, her muscles defined, but something had changed deep inside her. She didn't flinch at her reflection anymore, and she had started returning to the hidden garden night after night. She found herself sitting beside David, sometimes in silence, sometimes in conversation. Each time, something inside her felt lighter, warmer. But tonight was different. Tonight she brought something with her. Something buried for too long, a memory she never shared, a truth she always hid behind silence and strength. David was already in the garden. He was watering a new vine, thick and green. She entered quietly and sat beside him. He glanced at her and smiled. "You're getting good at not stomping." She didn't laugh, not this time. He noticed the change in her face, serious, quiet, eyes darker than usual. "Is something wrong?" he asked gently. She took a deep breath and looked at her hands. "They told me I was born wrong," she said. David stayed quiet, letting her speak. "My mother cried when she saw me, not because I was unhealthy, but because I was different. They said I was too rough, too large, too ... masculine." David didn't interrupt. He simply listened, and she continued. "They sent me to specialists, tried to fix my posture, tried to make me smaller, weaker. I trained in silence, worked harder than the others, but nothing changed. I stayed like this." She touched her arm, tracing an old scar. "I tried once to slice the strength out of me, to make my arms thin, to make my shoulders disappear." David's jaw tightened. He reached forward slowly and placed a hand over hers. Not to stop her, just to be there. Valari continued. "After that, they gave up. No one wanted me for the breeding line, not even as a servant. I was assigned to labor, a reminder of failure." Her voice didn't shake. She had cried long ago. Now it was just truth, flat and cold. David spoke finally. "They were afraid of what they didn't understand." She looked up, surprised. He met her gaze, steady and calm. "Power is scary to the weak, especially when it comes wrapped in something they can't control." Valari blinked slowly. "No one ever said that before." "They wouldn't," he said, "but I've seen what strength really looks like." He leaned forward and picked up a nearby flower, a strange, one-twisted stem, uneven petals, but blooming bright. "This one," he said, "grew sideways against the wall. No one thought it would make it." He handed it to her. "But it's alive, bright and stubborn." He smiled, "Just like someone I know." Valari held the flower gently. Her fingers trembled just slightly. "You're not wrong," she said. "I am stubborn." David chuckled. "Good. The galaxy needs more of that." They sat together for a while. No more stories, no more pain, just quiet understanding. And for the first time, Valari didn't feel like hiding her past because someone had really listened. When she returned to her quarters, she opened the small box under her bed. Inside were old memories, rejection notes, test results, labels stamped with failure. She looked at them one last time. Then she lit a small flame and burned them all. She watched as the ashes rose and whispered, "That girl is gone now." From the shadows of her shame, Valari stepped into something new. Not perfect, not healed. But no longer hiding, and far away, in a garden hidden behind metal doors, a flower with uneven petals kept blooming. They watched her from the shadows above the council chamber, eyes filled with fear, pride, and something close to envy. Valari stood tall in the middle of the room. She didn't wear her old cloak anymore. She no longer bowed her head. It had been many weeks since the station had seen such change, and it all started with one thing: Valari had begun to shine. The other girls followed her now, not with words, but with eyes full of quiet hope. They whispered to each other, "If she can be proud, maybe we can too." The station's ruling council didn't like this. They were made of elder males and tradition-bound officers. They called her influence unstructured emotion. They said she was confusing the young. Worse, they feared she was changing the system. So they summoned her, without warning, no reason given. Just a message: attend the high chamber immediately. David wanted to go with her, but Valerie shook her head. "This I must face alone," she said. But when she looked back at him, she saw a flicker of worry in his eyes. In the chamber, the council. Members sat in a curve of stone and light, their faces hidden by old ceremonial hoods. They didn't look at her, only read from their tablets. Valerie of Sector 6-1 began. "You are causing disturbance among the Tervari youth." Another added, "Your behavior is not fitting for a rejected female." Valerie stood firm, silent. A third voice, colder than the others, said, "You have two choices. Return to the old assignments, so leave the station." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, her voice rose, calm and sharp. "I was rejected. Not because I failed, but because your standard fears anything that doesn't bow." Gasps echoed in the chamber. The council shifted, surprised by her defiance. "I am not confused," she continued. "I am clearer than I've ever been." "You speak like a rebel," one hissed. "You speak like someone who has forgotten her place." Valerie narrowed her eyes. "No. I remember exactly where I came from. You made me believe I was nothing." She stepped forward, but I found someone who saw worth in me, and now others are starting to see it too. The eldest among them, quiet until now, leaned forward. "Ah, the human," he said slowly. "His presence is the spark." Then Valerie didn't deny it. Yes, but the fire was already there. He just didn't try to smother it. Silence filled the chamber. Finally, one counselor sighed. "You will leave this station within 3 cycles. It is decided," Valerie nodded once, then turned to leave, but at the door. She paused and said without turning, "When I go, you'll lose more than me." Then she walked outside the chamber. David was waiting. She told him everything in a flat voice. He didn't speak right away. Then he said, "Then we leave together." Valerie looked at him, surprised. "You'd give up your contract, your post?" David nodded. "I didn't come to this side of the galaxy for orders. I came to find something real." Valerie felt her throat tighten. "You don't have to protect me," he smiled. "I'm not," he said. "I'm choosing you later." That night, they sat in the garden for what might be the last time. Around them, the plants glowed softly under artificial moons. Valerie touched the flower he once gave her, still lived, just like her. It had refused to fade. "Where will we go?" she asked. David shrugged. "There are places where strong voices are welcomed. There are planets that need warriors like you." She didn't answer right away, but then she said, "Maybe it's time to build something new." The next morning, when she packed her things, she found a note in her locker, written in shaky Tervari script. "Thank you for making me believe I'm more. I will keep walking your path." It wasn't signed, but Valerie smiled, because it didn't need a name. Asterisk. She stood in front of the console, the light from the screen glowing against her violet skin. Her fingers hovered over the controls. One press, and the entire station would hear her. Every species, every worker, every girl who had ever been told she wasn't enough, Valeris. Heart beat like a hammer in her chest, not from fear, but from purpose. David stood behind her, silent, calm, ready. She turned her head just slightly. "Are you sure this will work?" He nodded. "I checked the signal pathways twice. Once you speak, no one can shut it off until it ends." Valerie looked at the screen again. She wasn't a trained speaker. She wasn't noble, rich, or chosen. But she had a voice, and today, that was enough. She pressed the button, the red light blinked, and the broadcast began. Across the station, screens flickered. Cargo bays, lunch halls, rest pods. Even the council tower. Everyone paused as Valerie's face appeared. Her voice, steady but soft, echoed through every wall. "My name is Valerie of the Tervari, and for most of my life, I believed I was broken. People froze. Some confused, others curious. No one changed the channel. I was born strong, wide, different. I was told that meant I had no place, that I was unfit, undesirable, and unworthy. Girls in quiet dorms leaned forward. Males with drinks in hand slowly lowered their cups, but I was wrong to believe them. And so were you. If you've ever believed the same. She looked into the camera, eyes fierce now. There is no single way to be valuable. No single shape that defines beauty or worth. David watched from behind the console. Not touching anything, just listening with pride, Valari continued. I thought I would leave this station forgotten. But before I go, I want to leave behind one truth. She leaned in slightly. If you've ever felt unseen, unwanted, if they called you too big, too small, too loud, too quiet, know this. Her voice didn't shake. You are not a mistake. You are not unworthy. You are a fire they couldn't control. They tried to put you out in a small room near the waste unit. A young alien girl cried silently. In the guard barracks, a Turvar woman lowered her weapon, hands shaking. In the council tower, the elders sat frozen. One tried to cut the feed, but it stayed live. Valari finished her message. I am leaving, but my voice stays. And I hope yours will rise next. She reached forward and turned off the signal. Silence filled the room. For a moment, she just stood there, breathing. Then David placed a hand on her shoulder. You just changed everything, he said. She didn't smile yet. She didn't cry, but her heart felt free, truly free for the first time later that day, as they walked through the loading dock. People watched her, but not with mockery anymore. They looked with respect, with thought, with something close to awe. Some nodded quietly. Some moved aside with silent gratitude, and as she passed by, a child reached out and touched her hand. The child didn't speak, just held her fingers for a second, then let go. No one stopped her, not even the guards at the gate. The ship waited small, but fast. David had already loaded supplies as she stepped aboard. She looked back one last time. The station behind her looked the same, but she knew it wasn't inside its metal walls. Voices were beginning to rise, and her words still echoed as the ship lifted from the dock. David set the course. Where to? He asked. Valari stared out the window at the stars. Some were close, some were far, but all of them were open now. Anywhere that needs a voice, she replied. Anywhere that needs fire. And with that, the ship vanished into the dark, leaving behind the voice of a girl no one chose, but who chose herself. The sky was purple here, not dark like space, not blue like Earth. It was soft like velvet just before night. Valari stepped off the ship and felt real wind on her face for the first time in years. The planet was called Serena. It was small, green, and mostly untouched. David had found it through an old Earth explorer's journal. It wasn't rich in fuel or metal, but it had something better: peace. The local people were kind. Mixed species lived together in simple towns. They didn't care about size or shape or background. They only asked, what can you do? What do you believe? Valari was quiet for the first few days, not because she was afraid, but because it felt too good. No stares, no whispers, no council judging her, just open fields, simple homes, and voices that welcomed her with warm smiles. David helped build a small center near the town's heart. He called it the Forge, not a place to make weapons, but a place to rebuild souls. And Valari, she became its voice every day. Girls and boys come young, old, alien, human, they trained with her. Learned to fight, to grow, to speak without fear. She didn't teach them to be like her. She taught them to be themselves. One day, a young Tervari girl named Saya stood outside the forge. She was small, thin, and too afraid to enter. Valari walked over and knelt down beside her. "Do you want to come in?" Sia looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "My mother said I wasn't real Tavari." She whispered. Valari placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Then maybe it's time we change what real means." Saya nodded slowly and followed. Her inside, news of Valari's forge began to spread. Other colonies sent requests. Could she visit? Could she teach others? David watched her become something more than she had ever dreamed. Not just a girl who had been rejected, but a symbol. They built gardens like the one from the station, this time under real suns. Flowers bloomed beside training mats, peace and strength growing side by side, one evening as the twin moons rose above the trees. David found Valari sitting alone. She was holding something in her hands. It was the old flower he had given her back on the station. Somehow, it still lived. She looked up and smiled. Funny how something small can survive so much. David sat beside her. "You're not talking about the flower," Kay said. She leaned against his shoulder. "I never thought I'd have this. Not love, not purpose, not home." He placed his arm around her gently. "You built all of this. I just watered the soil." She laughed, soft and true. Then turned serious. "I still have the scars." "I know," he replied. "They just remind you that you healed." There was silence for a while. Only the wind and distant laughter of the children playing near the forge. Then she asked, "Do you ever miss Earth?" David thought for a moment. "Sometimes," he said. "But I found my future in the stars." Valari looked at him. "You say that like I'm your future." He smiled. "Because you are." The next morning, a large ship landed outside the village, a diplomatic craft sent from a nearby alliance. They brought a request. "We've heard of your center. We want one like it on our moon base." Valari didn't answer right away. She looked at the children, at David, at the forge. Then she said, "We won't copy what we've built here, but we'll help you plant your own." The diplomats nodded in understanding. And just like that, a new journey began, years later. Stories of the warrior teacher spread across systems. Some called her a myth. Others believed she was just a strong leader. But those who had met her knew the truth. She was once a girl no one chose. Now she helped others choose themselves. And as for David and Valari, they walked the stars together. Not as saviors, not as rulers, but as two souls who believed that worth isn't given, it's discovered. And sometimes all it takes to start that discovery is a simple compliment.